All right, everyone, welcome to the second class of Practical Programming, a Zero to Hero guide on becoming a developer. This is Thursday. Tuesday was the light and easy day, but today is Thursday, and today is when shit gets real. Feedback. I actually already got some really great feedback from people who were here last class and some people who only saw the video, so the videos are being watched. And one thing that everyone asked was, what exactly are we learning? Sign me up for Worst Teacher of the Year for not knowing or going over that. So I wanted to start this class off with talking about the spectrum. So here is the development spectrum that I devised, and on one side there is what you see. And this is kind of like when you go to google.com, it's just what you see in the little window that is your browser. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's what you don't see. And when you think about it, when you go to google.com, it can't be as simple as typing it in and Google gives you back directly what you want to see. So when you think about it, there's tons of other stuff that's going on in the background. Google is checking to see if you've ever been there. They're checking to see your location. If you have an Android device, they're probably checking your microphone. That's for another day. So that's kind of like the two ends of the spectrum. There's tons of stuff that goes on in the background, and then there's stuff that you see, and that is two sides of a linear gradient that you can see on the screen. So the other thing, what you see is best equated to front-end development. And there's always kind of this, well, what is front-end? What is back-end? And I'll be the first one to tell you that there really isn't a very clear divide. The best divide that I can come up with is that front end is what you see, and back end development is what you don't see. And it all kind of depends. Some places front end goes further back than back end goes elsewhere. So anyway, we'll stay with the very simple definition of front end is working on things that you see, and back end is working on things that you don't see. So going further, you have front end being the web browser and what you see, and again, back end being a web server, which is what you don't see. One thing is to not get caught up in what exactly is a server. We're going to be going over that. For now, you can just think of it as the cloud, even though I really hate saying it that way. But it kind of makes it a little bit simple. But more when we get there. So now when I overlay on the spectrum what we're going to be learning, HTML and CSS are both on the side of the spectrum of what you see. So whenever you go to Google, you're seeing HTML and CSS rendered in front of you by your browser. JavaScript is kind of an interesting beast in that you don't really see it, but in a way you also kind of don't really see HTML or CSS, but you see the effects of them. But with JavaScript, you don't really see it, but you do see interactions that it provides. And I also kind of put it in the middle because JavaScript is not only a front-end language. You can actually use it to do things on the server, but we're not really going to go into that. But for now, you can just think of HTML and CSS being front-end. JavaScript is also pretty much considered front-end when coupled with HTML and CSS. And Ruby is our general-purpose language, and that is what we're going to be doing for back-end type development. So we're going to be covering the entire spectrum. But one thing that I don't want this chart to show you is that there's tons of front-end development and there's only a tiny part that's back-end development. And that's why I made it like this to show you that there's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Ruby, and then there's a ton of other stuff. And the back end goes infinitely deep with however much you want to happen as the web request is made. So that even includes things like database access, different services that you may talk to. For instance, when you request google.com, Google is actually talking to, you make a request to the web page, Google talks to its AdWords servers, it checks to see if you've been on Amazon and if they've had a cookie set, and then it shows you ads that are relevant to the last products that you looked at on Amazon, because Amazon is part of their retargeting program. So that's all to say that there's a ton that goes on when you make a request, and HTML, JavaScript, CSS definitely play a role, but I don't want it to appear that it's massive and Ruby is small. So with that, are there any questions on the development spectrum? Yeah.
Would you consider CSS to be more of what you see in HTML? More
Right. So CSS and HTML are both front end, and going back to the spectrum, it probably doesn't have the right scale. Really, those should be on top of each other. They're pretty much exactly the same as far as front endness goes. Anything else? All right. HTML. Whoop, whoop. I envisioned myself doing that when I was practicing this. So moving right along, I know yesterday or Tuesday, I told everyone we were definitely going to spice it up this time, and this is it. Starting off simple. This is an HTML tag. And that is a closing tag. This is a closing tag. You'll like my little annotations by the time this is over. Basically, a closing tag tells the interpreter, which 90% of the time is your web browser, that this tag is finished. That whatever this content that we've marked with this tag, that this is where we stop parsing it. So, sorry. So that is the opening tag, that is the closing tag, and if we clean this up a little bit, you can see that the tags in between them is content. And it's actually it's a lot easier to think of this. I know Tuesday I talked about HTML being a way to mark up documents and give them meaning. So when I say that there are these tags and then there's content, it's kind of best to think about content being some text that you're adding information to. So you already have a paragraph of text and you add these tags to let the computers know that it is in fact a paragraph of text. But looking closer at the anatomy of the tags, the tags start with angle brackets, which are just greater and less than symbols. And the tag name goes between the brackets. The tag name is usually just a shortened form, or sometimes even the actual word of a word or phrase that it means. And then in between there is the content. The forward slash, which is on the closing tag, is how you know that it's a closing tag. And that's where, once again, the closing tag tells the browser that it's time to stop parsing the tag that had opened. And in the middle is the content. Now, you may have or may not have guessed, but this is a paragraph tag, which is why it starts with a P. So let's go ahead and remove all the cruft and talk about attributes. So tags can also have something called an attribute. So an attribute is something like name equals value. So right now the attribute is foo equals bar, which is kind of a programming stand-in for something real. You'll kind of see that on the internet. So I'm really helping you in your Google searches. So we can take attributes and we can do something like style equals color red, and you'll see that because you added in the style attribute, the color of content turned red. So I want to go ahead and say that inline styles are not the way to go, but I guess I showed it to you for a reason. That's definitely not the best way to add CSS to an element. So it's kind of funny when you don't talk about something on purpose and then people like really want to do something in their projects, they'll just start doing it however they know how. And so I know before we talk about like loading CSS in different places, you guys are going to be putting CSS in your inline in your HTML. So you know it's fine, but it's not great. So taking a step back, some of you may be thinking like, well, you're talking about CSS. We're not even really down with HTML yet. I think one of the best ways to describe how this course is kind of going to work is that we may touch on some topics that we don't know anything about, but kind of roll with the punches, and you may not completely understand attributes, or you may not completely understand style tags and inline CSS, but we'll get there and you'll start getting a feel for it. So these kind of like touching on that, doing that kind of gets you used to the terms, and then you'll be like, oh, well, Judd said that we could use the style tag to do CSS, so if I want to work on this project and I want to change the color of this, or I want to make it bigger, how do I do that? And maybe you can find it out on your own. But let's go ahead and review basic tag structure one more time. So just going over it one more time, HTML tags. I mean, I know you guys are probably like, this is so simple, but HTML tags are a pair of angle brackets, a tag name, content in between, and the closing tag always has a / before the tag name. And that's pretty much all there is to HTML. Syntactically, it's kind of simple. It's also kind of hard because we haven't talked about some stuff, but it's pretty simple. So, you know HTML. What does this HTML mean? Sure, question.
So say you have to go back to this slide.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember. So this one is for paragraphs. It's a piece of paragraph. So say I want my title to be blue, my paragraph to be red. Do I have to do like the angle bracket T and then another angle bracket, or do I just make two separate lines? If that makes sense. That might be a dumb question.
No, I don't know exactly what you mean by title.
So like if I was in a blog or something and I was making my own and I wanted my blog title.
Oh, I see.
Ashley's blog to be purple and my paragraph to be red.
Right.
So I have two separate. And like
Right.
does the tagline change?
Yeah, exactly. So the question is, how would you make two different elements, two different colors? And the answer is that you would need two different tags. So we'll get there. That's a good question, and we're going to get there. I'm actually really excited about us getting there now. So there's my cheesy, awesome me. All right. So for real though, like what are some tags that I can use? I realized that I just brushed through all that, and I was really hoping everyone's going to be like, I don't know anything about HTML now. So it's time for an exercise. So if you have a computer or a laptop or a iPad or whatever, it's time to head over to practicalprogramming.org. And go ahead and click on the Learning HTML Tags link, which I really hope Tumblr posted.
It works.
Oh, great. I was trying Tumblr's queuing function. Okay, so after I ran through this one time, I actually kind of know that it's not going to really look like this, but you will get to a page that's kind of like this. You may have your code editor on top instead of on the side. But basically, this is a website called CodePen, and it's a really simple way to type in HTML, see the results. Pretty much there's the HTML, the results pane, and this is kind of a what you see is what you get. This is the view of what you have put in your HTML editor, which is on the top right, but it actually might be on the top left for you guys. And there's a CSS editor and JavaScript editor as well, which doesn't really show up on the projector as well as I'd hoped.
They're blank.
And they're blank. So what I want you guys to go ahead and do is change the top HTML title to be anything that you want it to be. Let's just go ahead and say, like, your name's HTML page. And I'll give you guys a minute to go ahead and do that. And you should go ahead and see it automatically update.
Inside the H1 thing. Tag.
Right.
H1.
Oh, it automatically changes.
Yeah. And it'll automatically update whenever you say that, or whenever you change it. So that's awesome. What tags were being used on that page? There were a lot of different tags that were used. And I guess I could have you do more exercises to go through and try and figure those out. But some of the basic tags that were used were heading tags. The H1 tag is a first level heading, which is actually the most important. Well, it's supposed to denote the most important heading on a page. So in Ashley's example of a blog title and an article paragraph, the title would probably be in an H1 tag, and that's where you would style the title. An H2 tag, which is just a second level heading, maybe some sort of subheading for the main title, and H3, and it goes on, I think, until H6. And it just, as headings become of lesser importance, you use a higher tag number. Some of the structural tags that were used was the P tag, which is a paragraph, which we already covered, a div tag, which is a divider, and you may think that the div tag is what's showing the dividing line on the page, but that's actually a horizontal rule, which we'll cover later. But a div tag is, it's at the very beginning of the document, but it stands for divider, and that's because it's supposed to divide the page into logical blocks. So you can think of it as dividing pages into segments. And so in the example page, there's actually only one segment because I didn't really get very advanced. But as soon as we start moving to CSS, you'll start seeing how it's very beneficial to have smaller segments of a page that you can style in certain ways. And the last is a span tag, which actually may have not been on the page. I can't remember if I put one in or not. But a span tag actually just allows you to give meaning to a span of text. So you could, this kind of goes into CSS when it becomes important, but it would let you give meaning to an arbitrary set of words in a paragraph, and maybe you could turn those a different color, you could make them bigger or smaller, those kinds of things. So when you think about just HTML in general, just being a way to give a document meaning, a span tag is just a very generic way to give bits of text meaning. And then there were some sentence semantics, the EM tag, which is used, and the strong tag, which is also used in the document. And I guess it might be helpful if you try and find those in the document. You don't have to. But the EM tag stands for emphasis, and the strong tag is for strong language. So I guess one of the first things that I want to talk about with those two is that it's not about style. HTML shouldn't be a way to give a page style. The default elements do have a style, and you can see on the page, there's no CSS on that page except for the teeny inline CSS that I added. And you see that all the HTML elements render a certain way. And in general, across all browsers, they'll render kind of the same way. H1 tags will be bigger than H2 tags, but just because you want some text to be bigger doesn't necessarily mean that you use an H1 tag. That's actually a job for CSS, and we'll get to that later. But now is all about learning how to give your documents meaning and not necessarily style. So in this example, if I said that this is how you give HTML is about giving text meaning, this would be an example style for the strong word and emphasis at the same time. Which is a good way to show you that you can also nest HTML tags, which is actually shown on the document as well. And you'll notice on the strong tags that the tags are closed with the last open tag closed first. So it's kind of a last open, first closed. So there's also some kind of tricky stuff. So the first being that not all HTML tags need a closing tag. If you look on the document, one of the tags that you'll see that you're probably like, oh, Judd, he just forgot to close it, is the image tag. Yeah, is an image tag. So image tags don't work like this, which actually a lot of people, when they first kind of get in a rhythm of open tag, close tag, they're like, ooh, I want to put an image here. How do I put an image? And so you open the image tag, you put in the URL of the image, and you close it, and you're like, where's my image? And then we haven't got to how to Google yet, so you don't even know how to Google for it, and you're just pretty much stuck. But that is not how it works. Images use an attribute called source. Well, it's actually SRC, but it stands for source. And you can see the tag name, the source, the equal sign, and the source URL. And the URLs, the values of attributes are always quoted. So we went over attributes and how you have the attribute name, and then you have the attribute value. The name is always unquoted, and the value is always quoted, which is just a tidbit that I thought of right now. And this is going through the attribute name and value. And an image tag is in a class of tags called self-closing tags. And it used to be that self-closing tags would actually be written as open bracket, open angle bracket, tag name, attributes, whatever, and then you would have a / close bracket. And that was the old days. That was like 3 or 4 years ago. We don't do that anymore. Now they're just written as is, and there is no closing / But there are a few other self-closing tags that you might want to be aware of. Some of them are in the document, some of them are not. And they are the HR tag, which is a horizontal rule, which is the horizontal lines on the page. The line break tag, and the input tag. And I don't think that's an exhaustive list, but there's some relatively simple ones that you might be aware of. It's definitely not exhaustive because my next slide is talking about BR. And also the I tag, the U tag, and the B tag. Now, well, and don't forget the center tag. Oh, it's like the slides just keep hitting me as I see them. Just don't. Those tags are from back in the way old days before there was CSS. The reason for the I tag and the U tag is to actually make text italicized and to underline text, and the B tag is for bold text. But it doesn't really give any meaning to the document other than that's how you wanted the text to look. So if you wanted your company logo to be, your text logo to be bold, and you put it in a B tag, that doesn't necessarily mean that that text is important, only that you wanted it to be bold. And if you wanted your name at the bottom of your article to be bold, it doesn't mean that that's a key point in the article. It just means that you like your name to be very prominent. And the same goes for the underline element and the I element. They don't really add meaning, they only add style. And so from an HTML perspective, they're actually pretty useless at giving documents meaning. So one of the things that we haven't really gone over today is an exhaustive list of tags. And one of the things that newer developers always, I think it's kind of one of those things that you always end up thinking is, well, I'll never remember all of this, or there's just so much stuff to know. And one of the things that is not really, I don't think, taught very well is the power of Googling. And so one of the things that we're going to do is, if you're interested in finding out how to do something with an HTML tag, go to Google and seriously Google HTML tag image. And that's how you're going to find, how do I put an image in a document? Or what's the tag name for image? If you Googled HTML tag div, you're going to find more information about what attributes can go on a div. It's kind of pointless to stand up here and go through each different thing and say, well, a div can have a possible 2 or 3 attributes, and an image has source, and it also needs an alt tag. Because to be honest, those kinds of things, I don't think you're going to be able to walk out and recall those anyway. So I think one of the best things I can teach you is how to Google to find the information that you need. And Stack Overflow posts are also nice as well. So the other thing about Googling and about finding information for yourself is to not be, I don't really know what it is, but don't be scared about not finding information. If you need help from me, email me, let me know if you're getting stuck somewhere. But anyway, so today is Thursday, and there's an assignment that we're going to be going through, and there's going to be a little bit of time after the slides for you to kind of work on, maybe do a little bit of your assignment and then ask me questions if you have any. But what I'd like for you guys to start doing is laying out the markup for your projects. So I know a couple of people had said that they wanted to do maybe portfolio sites. Some people had different kinds of sites that they wanted to do. But what all of these are going to have in common is that there's going to be some sort of front-facing visual aspect of the project. And what you can do is go ahead and start thinking, well, what are some of the main elements that I want to be shown? And how am I going how can I give this text meaning? So one of the things that you may start doing is saying, well, if I want to do a blog, you type maybe an example article, you start giving it meaning with paragraph tags, header tags, put some images in there. I think there were a lot of great projects, and I think a lot of them you can go ahead and start working on. And we're going to start going more into how the HTML works and why certain things are certain ways, and a little bit more advanced, and then getting into CSS. But what's going to be great is if you have something that's already kind of a simple marked up document, and you already know, I really want this to be centered, and I want it to be here or there. And then that way, once we start learning the things that you would do to do those different kind of stylings that you want to do, you'd have something already marked up to do that on. And it's not going to be beautiful. I posted a video on practicalprogramming.org that talks about how when people start working at a new skill, one of the things that they have good taste, but they aren't good at the skill. Kind of like my teaching. So you know that you're not doing a very good job, and you know you can be better, but it's unfortunate that you don't have the skill to be better, but you just have to keep doing it. So no one's going to be able to mark up their document and have the next Facebook overnight. So don't be worried about it not being beautiful, but it's going to start becoming real. And once you start getting something that's real, it's really exciting. Like for instance, like we have this, the code pen document that we have that all you guys are on right now. Like how simple is it to start changing things, and then whatever you're thinking is like coming up on the page. It's not the most terribly interesting thing ever right now, but it's kind of a start. So are there any questions? And then after this, we can talk more in depth about any specifics that you might have.
Is CodePen the best place for us to do our stuff?
CodePen is only one of it's one of a couple sites that you could do it on. I liked CodePen when I was just testing out different things, but there's another website called jsfiddle.net, and I can put a link to it on the blog. But for the most part, I think CodePen is going to be a good way to do the assignment.
Oh, nice. It's really easy.
Anything else?